Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mark Wallace, your host of the People Show on this special edition of the People Show. I call this my Justice Watch, and today we are featuring candidates who are running for election and running for re-election on the judicial circuit. And today, I have is my guest joining me now is the sitting appellate court Justice Cynthia Cobbs, who is, in my view, um, one of the, and if not the, in my view, my biased view, the most qualified person in the judiciary. Thank you and welcome to the program. How you doing?
Thank Mark. It's always great to be with you, and especially to hear such a great introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, it's certainly well deserved. I don't read your bio because it's so long, uh, and it's most bios are full of fluff and few facts, but that's not the case of yours. Um, but folks, this is someone who I have just admired since the day that I met her. Now, almost 10 years ago, I believe it was,
It's been a minute.
and it's been a while. And certainly, she is the current appellate court justice, and she is running for re-election. And we need to make sure that she goes back to that seat. She is highly qualified, and it's highly important that we have the right people on the bench. And she's certainly one of those that we should have on the bench. So, how's your campaign going? I know it's a lot of work.
Wow. Well, there have already been 3 stops this morning, beginning in Operation Push, and then to the 17th Ward, and then to the 6th Ward. And so,
Mhm.
and there's more to come even after this podcast, Mark. So we're in the home stretch and feeling really good about the campaign, feeling really good because of people like you who get the message out and who encourage the voters to, number one, vote. And then number two, to vote for the most qualified candidates, especially in these judicial races that can be so challenging and so daunting for people when they go in to cast their vote.
Yeah, it is the most, and it has been this just the most challenging of how do we get information out to people, and making sure that people know the right people to support in those offices. And ever since I've been on radio, I've been sort of scratching my head and prodding people, at the different bar associations to figure out ways creatively how we could make it more interesting and more informative for people and easier for people to know who it is that we need to have into the judiciary.
Absolutely.
I always say that the next highest person to God that can turn your life upside down is somebody in a little black robe.
That's
you know,
absolutely correct.
yeah.
And more people need to understand the impact that judges have on everyday lives.
Mhm.
So, individuals who decide not to cast a vote for the down ballot races, which is where we find our judges, really are making a huge mistake in not making certain that their voices are heard and making certain that we elect only the most qualified judges. You will see a judge, or somebody you know and love will see a judge in his or her lifetime before you will ever meet the president of the United States. Now, you might get a letter from the president's press secretary, but you're never going to have the president impact your life in the way that a judge can, from criminal sentencing to deciding who owes what on a contract to who gets the baby, who gets the pet, and all of the other things that come across our desk as judges.
That's interesting that we talked about how judges are on the down ballot and certainly at the end of the ballot. I wonder if we can get that changed
I
because
wish.
to suggest that judges should be the last decided when they have such an important role in our society is, you know, um, somewhat, disconnected. Um,
It's a little upside down, don't you
a
think?
little upside down, I
It's
think.
a little upside down.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that.
it's like
Yeah, I
we're
think.
like the judiciary is the third co-equal branch of government, but you will see legislative races before you will get to a judge. You'll even see the trustee of a village before you will get to see a judge over a county or even the state. It's like
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah,
So,
something's out of kilter. I'm going to start inquiring about that because to seeing
right.
if there's some way to change that on the ballot.
Right. And then,
And
then we
I think
wouldn't have to have this ballot conversation every election cycle.
absolutely, absolutely. That's I just thought about that, and we talk about that all the time. So
Mhm.
I just made a little note that to see who it is that we can start that conversation with. All right, but
Brilliant.
let's just talk about you. Let's talk about you,
Okay.
and uh, just talk to us about how you got involved in the judiciary, and then your history, because it's very interesting. Because most people don't have your history in terms of being involved in the judiciary.
Well, thank you, Mark. I can talk about my history because it is my history and it is my story. It is about my journey. And I always say nobody can really tell your story better than you can tell your story because nobody knows your story better than you know your story.
Mhm.
So I am actually a clinical social worker. I began my professional career as a social worker. I am a graduate of a historically Black university, Morgan State College in Maryland, where I attained my bachelor's degree and had some interest in working with families and children, and therefore sought and did attain my master's degree in clinical social work. That degree in clinical social work involved my working with families, in particular, families with children who were allegedly abused or neglected. Now, before my work as a clinician, as a clinical social worker, I was never in a court, never had to go to court for anything. And so I found the experience, number one, to be daunting, even though I was there for a great purpose, I think, and that was to advocate for the protection of children who could not otherwise speak for themselves, children who were allegedly sexually and physically abused or neglected. I found more often than not that judges who frankly are trained in the law certainly had no training in family dynamics, certainly did not understand developmental stages of children. So they could not understand why I would be saying that a child accused a parent of doing X, Y, and Z when in fact the parent was standing there and could very clearly and strongly attest that they hadn't done that. So it was a difficult task to often convince these judges who were trained lawyers about the needs of these children. That inspired me to perhaps seek a law degree, thinking that I can combine my law degree with my clinical social work degree and better advocate for children. Well, as you know, Mark, I was able to still do a little bit of that, but certainly not as much as I had been doing as a clinical social worker. When I actually attained my law degree, I ran smack dab into Justice Charles E. Freeman. And Justice Charles E. Freeman saw things in me that I would never even have imagined for myself. Because as an African American female growing up in my generation, there were no lawyers. There were no judges in my family. Those were not career paths that were offered to us. So, number one, I never thought I could be a lawyer. It was that inspiration that got me into law school. And then it was my encounter with Justice Charles E. Freeman that really was the genesis for much of my judicial and my legal career. He encouraged me in ways that I just found phenomenal, and I'm so grateful to him for doing that. Most of us know Justice Charles E. Freeman is the first African American to serve on our Illinois Supreme Court. When he ascended to the Illinois Supreme Court, he invited me to serve as his senior judicial law clerk. Now, understand, because he was the first African American justice on the Supreme Court, I then became the first African American senior judicial law clerk on the Illinois Supreme Court. There were no people of color on the Illinois Supreme Court. And so I was honored to be a part of his staff and to be the senior clerk, the individual to whom he would first turn with a question about the law or with a question about a case that was assigned to him as the authoring justice. So I spent 7 years as the senior judicial law clerk with Justice Freeman on the Supreme Court before I either got kicked out of that nest or left that nest. We can decide which one later, but I
Mhm.
left Justice Freeman after 7 years of working as the senior overseeing the legal work in his chambers on his behalf and collaboratively with him to join the Supreme Court's administrative arm. I went from my clerkship, became a staff attorney in the administrative office, and then chief legal counsel, overseeing the administrative office's legal staff. And then in 2002, was appointed by the Supreme Court to serve as the director, first African American, first woman ever appointed by the Supreme Court to serve as the director of the Illinois court system, not just a court, all the courts. Did that for 9 years. And then it was the Supreme Court who offered me a judgeship in the Circuit Court of Cook County. So in 2011, I left the director's seat, went to the Circuit Court of Cook County, where I served until 2015, which then the Supreme Court assigned me to the Illinois Appellate Court, which is where I've been serving now for 9 years. I'll pause.
All right. All right. Now, I always say this because it just comes from my heart. She should be on the Supreme Court. She's not there. I want to just ask you, because I have a reason for asking you, do you have a future desire to be on the Supreme Court? I mean, you know.
Leave it to Mark Wallace to ask me that question. You know, you never give up your dreams. I'll say it that way. It is no secret. There was not anyone in Cook County who was not aware that it was Justice Freeman's dream, and I shared in that dream that I would succeed him as a justice on the Illinois Appellate Court. That did not happen. I did run for the seat. I was not successful in my campaign to do that. I don't think you ever give up your dream. I think that there are things that get in the way of a dream, things that might prevent you from ever, realizing that dream, but you never give up your dream. Working as the director of the Illinois courts, working with Justice Freeman as the senior judicial law clerk was work that I loved, work that I enjoyed, and work that, frankly, I believe I did well. And Justice Freeman believed that too, or he would never have wanted me to succeed him. And so I would never give up my dream. I don't have any current aspirations as I'm now running to, continue my service on the appellate court.
Right.
But you never give up your dreams.
Well, certainly we want to make sure that you are retained on the appellate court, and I will have conversations with you about why I ask you that question.
Okay.
Because I have my own agenda.
I see.
And I believe that just because we don't get to a place where we were trying to get to, that God has a different path that we sometimes don't see, but he sees how to get us to that. So I certainly absolutely agree with that we don't give up on our dreams. But we'll certainly talk about that. Yeah, we'll certainly talk about that, and I'll tell you exactly why I asked you that question. All right, so so your number, what's your number on the ballot?
We got to say my punch number, because for some reason folks are either linked to a name, linked to a number, or linked to both, and I am punch number 132.
132.
132. It's easy. We've been making rhymes about it. That's what all candidates do. They find their number, they find their punch number, and then they find what they think is a catchy little phrase to kind of like attach to that. So, I'm no different. I have a catchphrase too. So
well, I make it no secret that I have and will use every possible avenue that I can to make sure that people know who Justice Cobbs, Cynthia Cobbs is, and make sure that they support her. And every person that I have spoken to that have heard you speak always say that she's the smartest person in the room. And I say, I know it, and she's my friend. And so she's the smartest person in our judiciary, and that's no overstatement whatsoever. And so I'm proud to be a supporter and proud to know you, and I'm going to do all that I can in these next couple of days, because we know that our election, the general election for us, is the primary.
It's
right?
March.
It's
now.
March. March is the primary. So we've got 3 more days. I want to make sure that people know who you are. So I'm asking everybody that Justice Cynthia Cobbs, if you don't know who she is, trust me, we want her and need her to go back to the appellate court. She does have an opponent, and we need not have someone who does not have the experience that she has and this, the spectrum that she has to be there. It would not do the court well not to have Justice Cynthia Cobbs on the court. All right, so help people understand exactly what you do and what the appellate court's role is in the judiciary.
I'm glad you asked, Mark, because it's not unusual for the voting public to be confused about how our court system operates. We have a 3-tiered system of courts in Illinois. Every case starts most likely in the trial court. That's the court where you go to, present your witnesses, to present evidence. There's a single judge who's sitting on the bench, who's calling the balls and the strikes, who's ruling on objections, who's listening to the witnesses, and at the end of the case is entering a judgment. If it's a criminal case, either finding you guilty or acquitting you. If it's a civil case, either entering a judgment for the plaintiff or the defendant. That is the trial court. If in the trial court you lose, you have the right in Illinois to an appeal. In 30 days after the judgment, as long as you file your notice, you have the right to appeal. So again, the trial court judges call the balls and the strikes. The appellate court are the judges who do the instant review, the instant replay. So I am an appellate court justice. I am one who does the instant replay, looking at the record of what occurred in the trial court to make a determination as to whether the trial court made errors, whether the trial was fair, whether the trial court heard evidence that he or she should not have heard, whether there was any bias with the jury. Those are the kinds of issues that come before the appellate court. So 30 days after a judgment in the trial court, you have the right to appeal to the appellate court, any kind of case, as long as it was heard in the trial court first and there was a final judgment. If you don't like what the appellate court does, then you don't have a right to appeal to the Supreme Court. You may petition the Supreme Court and they may hear your appeal, but it's not likely. In Illinois, like most states, the Illinois appellate court is your court of last resort. That's where most of the law is made. That's where the law upon which judges in the state rely. That's the law upon which lawyers who are preparing their cases for court rely. So we write judicial decisions. And at my at this juncture in my appellate court career, Mark, I've been the authoring justice of more than 500 appeals. That's me as the author. I've participated in far more than that, but you will find decisions that say Justice Cobbs delivered the judgment of the court. That's my legal analysis. That's my writing. That's my rendering. Those cases are cited in the law books, are cited by lawyers when they're arguing their case. So that's what the appellate court does. We are the instant replay judges. We determine what went right and what went wrong in that trial court. That's why we are pretty much the most essential court in the system.
So folks, understand that even though we have the Illinois State Supreme Court, the highest court that we will largely depend upon is that of the appellate court,
Absolutely.
Which is important to making sure that you have the right people on the court. That's why it's important. So even though the judges are at the end of the ballot, that does not suggest the level of their importance. The level of their importance is really before. You would, like she said before, you're going to likely have the need to be before a judge or be before a court long before you will meet a president, if you ever meet a president of the United States. And certainly, I think that it's more important for me to understand who is on the court in many respects. than necessarily who might be in some sort of political office, even though that's important. But the people who make critical decisions over your everyday life are the people who are on the courts. The court is a very important place, and we need to make sure that we pay close attention to who is on that court. I mean, there are some people who are running for office that running for the courts that we need to know about, that are quite concerning. I don't want you to comment about that, but I just putting it into perspective that Justice Cobbs is one of those people that we need to protect for ourselves, to be protected, to make sure that we have somebody of that legal mind. Now, that does not mean that she's always going to decide, hopefully, in our favor. But we do know that we have somebody who is capable, who understands the law, who understands the Constitution, and will apply it appropriately. That's what that's where you want to make sure of who is on the court. And we have that. What else can you share with the audience about you, and that you would like people to know about you? For me, they know everything about you. You're brilliant. You're brilliant.
Thank you, Mark.
You're beautiful, and all that other stuff.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, what else would you like them to know?
Well, it's I always tell individuals with whom I talk that we are public servants. Every judge at every level, we are public servants. We serve you, which is why it's so important that you exercise your right to vote for those who you wish to have serve you. Now, if you want an idiot to serve you, find an idiot on the ballot and vote for them. But I suspect that's not what you want. My work as a judge is as important to me as my work off the bench. So we have this process, Mark, and you understand it, for associate judges, where full sitting judges will interview associate judges to determine whether they should serve. I don't ask those candidates about their legal careers or their legal backgrounds. It's apparent on the resume. I instead ask them, what are you doing in the community? What are you doing to improve, the plight of those who might be less fortunate? And so public service is very important to me. And I happen to feed my social work hunger by serving on a couple of not-for-profits. And I'll talk about one because it's the one I talk about always. Sometimes we think that the homeless population is just in the city of Chicago. I happen to live in the Southland, where the homelessness population is probably just as problematic. And so I've been serving on a board, South Suburban PADS, Public Action to Deliver Shelter to the homeless population, because I think it's an important social issue and one that we certainly can and should resolve in this country. So I think public service for judges is important. The other thing that I think of as a lawyer and as a judge is that we have to ensure that everybody, no matter where they come from, no matter what their resource levels are, has access to our court system. We have so many self-represented individuals who come into the courts now without lawyers for whatever reason. Some can't afford it. Some decide they can do better than a lawyer. Some think they know the law better. Whatever the reason, those individuals are entitled to access to justice. And now we're seeing more pro se litigants in the appellate court. Without a record, they generally don't prevail, because we can't tell on the appellate court what actually happened in the trial court. You need a record. And so I advocate for there to be some means by which the record of proceedings in trial courts for those individuals who come and can't afford a record, but there be a manner in which a record can be produced and presented in the event those individuals want to come before the appellate court. So, those are my big things: access and public service. That says a lot about who I am and what I bring to the bench, other than my experience and my qualifications. I think if you visit my website, you'll see that I have the highest bar ratings in my race. And thank you for mentioning that I do have an opponent. I do, with negative bar ratings. And I will say that flat-footedly. Don't make a mistake. bar ratings are important. And Mark, you know this, we are heavily vetted by more than 15 bar associations who talk to litigants, who look at our body of work, who make some determination about who we are and what we bring to the bench. So I am proud to say that my bar ratings are stellar. They're the highest in my race. And I'm endorsed by so many entities, labor, the Democratic Party, and others. And so you told them correctly, Mark, be careful, because you're going to see us before you see any of those other people whose names you found on the ballot before you got to our names.
And I'm telling you to be especially careful to make sure that you vote for Justice Cynthia Cobbs. All you have to do, go to Injustice Watch, and you can see what her records are. They are stellar. Her record is stellar, and I'm telling you, they're stellar. She's brilliant. If you want to see, and I'm going to share more about her when I have more time to talk about it, because I don't have that much time with her, because I know she's running. So I asked her to be here, and she's taking this time with us to be here. But you'll get to know more about her in detail when I am able to talk about through her bio that is extensive, and it's all wonderful, all wonderful. And this is who we want on the court. So you have some public speaking, or what am I trying to say? Public showings today?
I do.
Okay.
I've had three. This morning we were out at Operation Push,
Okay.
and I was on VON
Yes.
with that host who was who was hosting at Push. And then I was out at the 17th ward with Alderman Committeeman David Moore, who many of your listeners, and I know you know. And then there is a little bit of a change in the 6th ward, where we had Alderman Committeeman Rod Sawyer. Now there's a transition to Senator L.G. Sims, who is the incoming committeeman and alderperson in this period. So we've been all three of those places. And this evening I will be in Evanston with a group called the Chessmen, really just engaging with those voters in Evanston in, a forum or a venue that is more social than political, but nonetheless we'll be engaging with them. So, and then we're winding down. I'm at 4 churches tomorrow, because I still believe, and thank you for Logos, I absolutely enjoy Pastor Parsons and the warm welcome that I received there. But I'm in 4 churches tomorrow as the final push to have voters understand the importance of this race. Mark, I believe still that the Black church is where the Black community continues to receive valid and important information about social issues that impact our community. And for that reason, I'm going to be at those 4 churches tomorrow.
Okay. Can you tell us what 4 churches you're going to be at tomorrow?
Yes, I am going to be at New Faith Baptist Church, that is located out here in Matteson, Illinois. Their worship service is 10. The pastor is Reverend Trunell Felder. I will likely not speak at New Faith, but I will be at New Faith, and I will be greeting the congregation after the worship service. I will then also be at a church, Victory International, in Park Forest, Illinois, where Apostle Carl White Jr. is the pastor, and then at First Baptist in Park Forest, where Pastor Randall White is the pastor, and then I will be at Full Gospel Church, also in Park Forest, with Apostle Ron Wilson. So 4 churches that I'm going to be at.
Okay, folks. Well, so she's going to be out in Park Forest, so you can check out either one of them. Carl White is my friend. I was just there celebrating the life of one of our members who made the transition from Lagos, who was out. They had their services out there a couple of weeks ago, so I was out there. I had never been to his new location, and it's a wonderful location out there in Park Forest. But you spoke to something earlier about access and having access, and I spoke to another appellate court candidate that is running for a seat, not her opponent. That's running for a different seat on the appellate court, and we were talking about access, and I posed the question to saying that it's a daunting task for people to try to go to court and represent themselves. But some people, as you say, they just don't have the wherewithal to afford counsel. But at the state level or at the lower court level, they do have assistants where they help people complete their filings and all that sort of thing, and even have some lawyers that provide them with information. I think that that would be a good thing, even at the appellate court, because it's even more stringent to make sure that they have the, as you say, the record, so that the appellate court justices will be able to take a look and see what happened in the game, so to speak, right? And
Absolutely.
so most people don't have the wherewithal to do that. And I think that would be a good arm to have in between, so that people who cannot afford to hire an attorney and certainly don't have the wherewithal to do it, but they want to have access. So to help them just prepare that, so that the justices can have a clear record of what happened.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. The Supreme Court has done really, I think, a great job. It's an important work in creating what they have named or characterized as an Access to Justice Committee. It's been in operation now for several years. And as a result of some of that work, there are these really simplified forms that self-represented litigants can utilize to, tell the appellate court the facts of the case, tell the appellate court why they are appealing, tell the appellate court what they think went wrong in the trial court and what relief they are seeking. That's a form. They still need the record of proceedings. We still don't know what happened in the trial court. So several years ago, when I was the director of the Illinois courts, we began to install digital recording in many of our trial courts. Now, it works in some trial courts and it doesn't work in others. Some of our courthouses are very, very old. Now I'm putting on my director's hat. So I'm going back, Mark, putting on my director's hat. So some of our courthouses, which are very, very old, do not have the capability to have digital recording installed. But we have been successful, or the courts have been successful in some of the newer courthouses. So for instance, at 1100 South Hamilton here in Cook County, where we have our juvenile courts, you'll find digital recording in there. In some of the traffic courts here in the Daly Center, you'll find digital recording there. But I would advocate for some other means, if it can't be installed in the way that it is in the more modern facilities. I would advocate for some means by which we could digital record trial court proceedings for those individuals who cannot afford it. Not everybody, because everybody would say, I want free court reporting too. But I think that we further enhance accessibility to the courts when we find the means, the methodology by which we can record those proceedings. Because Mark, that when we don't have the record of proceedings, we presume that the trial judge understood the law and applied it correctly. That's a presumption.
Exactly.
It's rebuttable, but it's only rebuttable if you have the record.
Right. So folks, in layman's term, appellate court justices don't look to reverse decisions by the lower court, because they presume that they know what they're doing and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we have to make sure that the records are there. And I think that that's an important thing, because there are some courts that we go in that we don't have court reporters, and you don't have the record, and all you have is what the judge has ruled on. And in most cases, judges do a fairly good job, but there are a few that don't get it right, which is why we have an appellate court.
That's right.
Appellate court justices. All right. So, well, listen, after you have retained your race, I have the privilege of knowing two sitting appellate court justices, you and Carl Walker, two people who I admire. Carl Walker told me the other day that I am to tell people that he is the president of my fan club. So that's what he said. So I said, okay, all right, Carl, I'll take that. Okay. So he's been a great encourager, but I know both these people, but I want to focus on your race, because he doesn't have an opponent.
He's unopposed.
And he's unopposed, and we're glad that he's going back to the bench. and I want to celebrate you going back to the bench. And when you go back to the bench, I want to have you all to come back so we do a round table, right? That we have a round table so that people can get, we can do it more in depth, that people can really understand what goes on, where you all sit and the work that you all do. So that's going to be something that I would love for us to do after this, after you get a chance to get a little rest.
Thank you for that. I wouldn't mind a little rest.
All right, folks, listen, punch 132 for Justice Cynthia Cobbs. If you haven't voted, early voting is still open. You can go to any early voting polling place. And if you are not sure, if you're not going to vote until the day of voting and you're not sure where your polling place is, go on the Chicago Board of Election, put your information in there, your voter information there, and it'll tell you where your polling place is and all of your representatives in your districts there. So make sure you get that information, but go vote and make sure that you vote for Justice Cynthia Cobbs. Thank you very much for being with us.
And, thank you, Mark. It's always my pleasure to be in any space with you, even if it's electronic.
I appreciate it. All right. I'll see you on the trail sometime soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mark. Always enjoy talking to you.
Okay. Have a great day. Thank you so much. All right, folks, make sure that you support Justice Cynthia Cobbs. She is a fantastic justice of the court. And I'm telling you, we will, if we don't retain that talent on the court, that will be a terribly, terribly missed opportunity. We missed the opportunity to put her on the Illinois State Supreme Court. And I just want to say that it was the first time in history that they broke tradition, and it was the only time in history that they broke tradition. And it happened to be when the outgoing, retiring Chief Justice Charles Freeman retired, and he selected Justice Cynthia Cobbs to replace him on the bench, that the other justices did not honor that. And we have somebody in that place, and this is Mark Wallace talking, that Cynthia Cobbs should be there. But at some point, it is my hope and it is my dream that we have her and we elevate her to the Illinois State Supreme Court, because we need her in that space. But right now we need her at the space where she is. So please make sure that you tell your friends, that you tell your family to support Justice Cynthia Cobbs to go back to the appellate court. She is qualified, she is brilliant, and she certainly has the courage and the character and the conscience to do the job. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you all for tuning in to the program. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I'm going to be talking with retired Cook County Clerk David Orr about the Board of Review race that is going on there, and why it is important that we switch horses in that race to work better, fairer, for our communities. We're going to be talking about that right back here at 3 o'clock on tomorrow on The People Show. Thank you all for tuning in to this broadcast. Make sure that you get out